Welcome. My name is Johanna Jackson, and my pronouns are she, they. I work for French General Conference as the Communications Associate. This is a 55-minute video that shares conversations among Quaker web workers, particularly people that have experience with Google Sites, the Quaker app, which comes out of the UK, and WordPress, but it also includes some tips for security and other elements of web building. If you are a Quaker web worker, you may be interested in the Quaker Communications Community of Practice, or QCCOP. The way to find out more or to join a listserv is to go on the website, fgcquaker.org, click Programs, click Quaker Communications Community of Practice. All right. And here's what to expect today. We'll start with some introductions. Each person will have time to share your name, pronouns, and what brought you here. If you go on and on, I may cut you off and make room for other people to share. Some people are more reticent to speak, so I really want to make sure that we moderate that. And then after that, we have an open space to discuss with one another. There are breakout rooms available. Those are quite flexible. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should have an so now we'll move on to introductions. Please share your name and what brought you here and your pronouns. Is there actually, Lois, would you be willing to go first?
Sure. My name is Lois Richter. I'm with Davis Monthly Meeting, or Davis Friends Meeting. And we had a website on FGC on the cloud, and we have been working on moving to someplace else. And so that's how I heard about this, and that's why I'm here. I use she. I don't care if you call me they, that's fine too.
And Lois, will you call on someone else to go after you?
I will call out on Susan Lee Barton.
I am, Susan Lee Barton, go by Susan Lee, she, her, hers. And I'm a part of Clear Creek meeting. And since there are several Clear Creek meetings, I identify the yearly meeting as well, which is Ohio Valley yearly meeting. I'm currently in Richmond, Indiana. Ohio Valley is along the Ohio River. So Northern Kentucky, Southern Ohio, and Indiana. And I am the website manager for my monthly meeting, and I'm also the staff person for my yearly meeting, so I do some website work as part of that. We are currently on the Quaker cloud in the process of figuring out to move, and we had sort of decided on DreamHost, and then I ended up getting mad at Dream. But we just decided at monthly meeting yesterday to take the Quaker Meetings Network in the UK up on their offer of a free trial to see what that's like. And I was curious to see if anybody else was thinking about that direction or knew about that. I can give more info on that if needed. Let's see, how about Bruce?
Okay, Bruce DNS, he, him. I'm a member of the Annapolis Valley monthly meeting in Nova Scotia, Canada. I've worked professionally in web hosting, web design, web maintenance. I've been managing the Canadian Yearly Meeting site since 1999, and currently about 10 other monthly meetings, half-yearly meetings across the yearly meeting. And what I'm particularly intrigued about is the difference between the challenges that meetings have between professional design versus amateur design versus community design. There's all kinds of different approaches. Like, do you want something that you can give to a professional, have them manage it, not have to worry about it, and just ask them for the features you want and it happens? Or do you want members of your meeting, without necessarily professional training, to be able to manage, create, and design the site, in which case a whole different set of software is needed? So yeah, it's So I'd be interested in talking about the different approaches of that meetings have in terms of their needs. Do they need to not have to worry about it and leave it to somebody paid to do it? Do they really feel it's important to have community involvement in the creation of it? How does that affect uh, the type of solutions that can be used? For me, all of those sites are hosted on wpmu.dev, because it's way easier for me to do everything with similar software, a similar background. If I had to host each meeting on its own site, I would just give up. It would just be way too much work. And so that makes it more cost effective for the meetings, because I can um, um, I don't have to keep reinventing the wheel each time. So that's why I'm interested in how people approach that. To what degree do you want meeting members to be very much involved in the site, and to what degree do you just want to give it to somebody and make it happen?
Call in the next person.
Um, Allison?
Hi, friends. I'm Allison Kierkegaard. I use she or they pronouns. I am in Pacific Yearly Meeting currently. I recently moved back from Nashville Meeting, where I helped Nashville transition from Quaker Cloud to Google Sites. And in the past, I've also managed the website for Claremont Monthly Meeting and helped with Southern California Quarterly and Pacific Yearly. So I'm eager to exchange wisdom here. And I will call on Sean.
Thanks, Alison. So I'm Sean Yaka. At the moment, I'm in Mallorca, Spain, but I live in London, and I go to Hampstead, what we call local meeting. I guess that's monthly meeting in the States, and it's part of Britain yearly meeting. I have a background in software development, and when I started attending Quaker meeting, it was really interesting to see for me to see what kind of technology Quakers were using, and I was really surprised actually, because my meeting, it turned out, was using the technology that Susan, you mentioned, the Quaker Meetings Network, and I hadn't heard of it before, and I was really interested. So I really like open source software development. I like making things myself. I was really eager to see, how I could get involved. And here was this software that was a platform created by friends for friends, and it looked great, and but it was what I saw was that it wasn't really it wasn't adopted nearly as much as I would have expected it to be, and there's some reasons for that, which I don't think are the fault of the Quaker Meetings Network itself, but more due to the fact that it released after the pandemic, and the Quakers have all sorts of different ideas about how to do things. But I would love to share some of my experience with it, and then also to kind of talk about what I would really love to find is a group of Quakers who are also software developers who are interested in making not just websites, but actually in developing software. So that's a little bit of my background, and I could pass it over to Pete. I think you're the last one.
Hey, well, I'm Pete McCoggan. I'm from Wilton Quaker Meeting in Connecticut, which is part of New York Yearly Meeting. And our meeting was on Quaker Cloud. And when we found out that we were going to be, that was no longer going to be the platform, I worked with my meeting and with my son, who is a programmer, to put our meeting's website on Google Suites. And it is now up and running on Google Suites, and it's at wiltonquakers.org if anybody wants to look at it. And we took a lot of the ideas from Quaker Cloud and used those, but made some changes and sort of made it a little simpler. I found out that, and we had some discussion about whether or not to use Google, but we found out that New York Yearly Meeting was using Google pretty extensively. And so that sort of gave us the freedom, I think, to use Google for our sites. And so far, it's worked out pretty well for us. And I'm willing to share whatever I can about our transition and any questions you might have.
Would you say again the name of your website, the URL?
Yes, it's wiltonquakers.org. I can put it in the chat if you'd like.
So what I'm hearing from the introductions is I heard an interest in the Quaker Meetings Network, specifically with Sean and Susan Lee, a mention of Google Sites, a debate about professional design versus community design and how a website is maintained. And I know you're writing things, Lois, but I didn't recall a specific topic that you shared in the beginning, but
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought we were just doing like little quickie introductions and then we'd get to the other. So I'll come back around to give them our history. I started doing websites, hand coding them with HTML back in the 90s and then stopped for a while. But when we decided to do, when we needed to create a new website leaving the cloud, we already have a domain name. And so all we had to do is point it to wherever we decided to make the website. And so we talked about it, we decided to use WordPress. And one of the primary reasons has to do with what Bruce was saying. I could certainly make a website for the meeting, no problem. I could hand code, it'd be great. But what happens when I die? You know, nobody else is going to be doing HTML anymore. Okay, so we'll have to figure out a different. So what we decided was we would create the site using WordPress, getting basically a free place to put it, and then just pointing to it from our domain. And that way people could, in the future, learn WordPress and work on the website and, make changes if needed. We also decided that we were going to have a fairly static website. We don't want things that are going to have to be changed. A, does anybody remember to do it? B, does anybody remember to notify the person who would do it if they were told it? All that stuff. And then the final thing was we chose not to put in human being names in there. So the contact places, if you need to send its information or have questions, it's info@davisfriendsmeeting.org. And because we have our domain, we can have as many email addresses as we want. But that way there's no one person who's getting it. You can choose outside of the whole website where to forward those emails to. And it means that the website doesn't have to change even when you change officers or you change, structure or whatever. So that's how we've chosen to do it. It is up and running at davisfriendsmeeting.org. And that's what we decided.
And who is your host?
Oh, we went through WordPress.
WordPress is the
WordPress.
Who's
WordPress is a.
I know WordPress, but
there are two organizations, and if you sign on to WordPress, you have and can have at any time you want a website URL. And that is where whatever you create in WordPress lives there. Now you can also, if you have a separate place that you want to work, you can get a WordPress program someplace else and do it there. But in general, if you have a WordPress site, it could be loisrichter.wordpress.com, or it could be whatever it is, and then you point to it from your domain. So that's what we did. We created our site on WordPress for free, and then we pointed to it from our domain. One of the things to understand
Wait,
is our
hold on, Lois. Hold
what?
on, Lois. Did that answer your question, Susan Lee? Because I didn't quite hear what your question was.
Yeah, I didn't, WordPress is used in a lot of different, websites and hosts, but, and we're using WordPress, but, I didn't realize that WordPress themselves actually hosted.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of websites are hosted on WordPress. Yeah.
It's not quite as flexible as if you host it on your own server. You have way more opportunities for themes and plugins than you do on WordPress.org or com, but essentially the same core software.
One of the things to understand is that our meeting, Davis monthly meeting, is tiny. It is tiny, tiny, tiny. And we don't have the resources to want to spend a lot of money on the website. And some of our people don't even think we need one. So it's like we're doing it not only cheaply, but we're doing it with an eye towards self-maintenance. And that's a lot of our decisions were because of that self-maintenance part. Okay, I'm going to mute myself now so I don't interrupt anything.
So now that we have a sense of who's in the room, I want to ask is it working for you all to meet as a group of 6? I see Susan Lee nodding.
Pretty small group. Yeah. It's not like there's 20 of us here. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Then I will give me a sign, like something in the chat, if you see that you want breakout rooms, because I was trying to name them based on what's alive in the room, and that's shifted a bit.
I think the point that Lois made is really key. That, like, for instance, I just worked on the Ottawa Quaker meeting site. Somebody who was very dedicated to the meeting and very knowledgeable created a Drupal site and was happy programming the Drupal and doing it all. And then when they moved on, nobody knew what to do with it. And the version of Drupal is no longer supported. And it requires a new version of PHP, which would crash it if I upgraded the server, yada, yada. So it's great that you have somebody with the skills, but as Lois said, what happens when they're no longer there? So all the sites that I do are WordPress. And it's fairly easy for somebody, not necessarily to design from scratch, but to edit. And you can set up various levels of access. So somebody can be an editor only, or it can be an administrator, or it can be, you can set up. And the other piece is when you have something like WordPress, all the security updates and the other compliance updates are automatic. Whereas if you've programmed your own site, you have to constantly be reprogramming security updates, making it compliant with new versions of PHP. It's a huge amount of work. So yeah, finding that balance. One of the things I do for cost effectiveness is WordPress also has a multi-site option. So for instance, for the Atlantic half-yearly meeting, there's an Atlantic half-yearly meeting site, which is a multi-site, which means it also has Annapolis Valley, Halifax meeting, New Brunswick meeting, etc. And they're all on the same WordPress site, but if you just go to annapolisvalley.quaker.ca, you would never know that. But it's only one cost for the hosting that gets distributed between the 4 monthly meetings and the half yearly. So there's all kinds of possibilities with collaboration with WordPress that can cut your costs. Then you just have one person who's a super user who can manage all 5 sites at the same time. Makes life easier and cheaper.
Where I'm involved, it's with the one place that I work with is with the Quaker Arts Network, and they have a WordPress site, and it's very useful because lots of folks know WordPress, and WordPress is like a blogging software, so it's designed for people who aren't web developers to be able to work with. I think that you have like this continuum. If you were to build a bespoke site, you have one person whose mind it came out of, and they know how it works, and then when that person goes, you're in real trouble. WordPress is maybe somewhere in the middle, where it's not, it doesn't do everything for you, right? So you still have to have a host for your domain, which is going to be where the WordPress software is running, and then you might get emails from that, and you have then different. It requires, I think, a little bit of knowledge on the part of the people in the meeting to be able to manage, which is, I assume, Bruce, why you're doing that for different meetings, because they feel like that would be a big lift for themselves.
Yeah, I tend to do the most of the back end work, but most of the meetings have an editor, so then they don't want to pay somebody to do, oh, I'm going to change the newsletter, or I'm going to change the they can do all that themselves easily by just editing a page. But if they want to do a complete site redesign, they'd have a developer do that. But it means that people can maintain the site pretty easily, as you're saying.
I think that what the Quaker Meetings Network does, it sort of takes it one step further. So if you get an account with them, they'll be able to register your domain. If you want to have a site running on their domain, they have a domain, quakermeeting.org, and so you can have a subdomain of that, which could be like clearcreek.quakermeeting.org. So it reads, but it's long. But if you wanted to have clearcreekmeeting.org,
yeah, we're using our own domain.
Right. So you could you could either register that domain yourself from a company that allows you to do that, and give them that information, or you could just allow them to do that part for you. And they would basically, it's just like it's one point of contact that you then that your meeting has to have, so that everything is basically all your digital needs from email to domain management to website hosting are done there. And there's a back end, like there is for WordPress, that you go into, but it's not just a back end for the person who's working on the website. It's a back end for the entire meeting. So it doesn't look like it's a blogging software. It actually looks very inviting. So when you log into that, you see the people who have registered an account for your meeting there, and they can have like little avatars to represent them. And it's actually really well done. It's sort of like a pictorial version of a person, so you can still kind of individualize yourself, but it's not exactly a photo. And then they have places for file storage for your meeting. So if you have your business meeting minutes, you can post them there. So you have a place that's protected, but it's open to anyone who's in your meeting who registers an account with you. So you have file storage, you have a notice board, you have a calendar, and the calendar is sort of special because the calendar events can feed into the website. So there's this website builder tool that is more like Squarespace, less like WordPress. So
I thought they used WordPress. It's their brochure says that they use WordPress.
No, the platform itself is something that they built. I'm not sure where
they said they built it with WordPress, using WordPress.
Like I think they took inspiration and pieces from WordPress, but it's far. It looks nothing like WordPress when you're using it. And I think for all extent and purposes, it's really a lot different. When I discovered it, I was just amazed at how tailor-made it is for meetings, and it's still. I mean, I think in the US they're offering it at around like a little bit below $150 a year.
Right now, it's free for meetings to try for 6 months.
Oh, neat.
Right, right.
Thank you,
And then I
Sean.
think, sorry.
I said thank you. That's useful to know.
What is the URL?
So the URL to get information about Quaker Meetings Network, and the product is called Quaker App. It's quaker.app/about.
I got it. Thank you.
And the offer for the US that Susan, you were referring to with the 6 months free is, I think that's at quaker.app/US. Yeah, I just happened to go to New York Yearly Meeting this year, and heard about the Quaker Cloud, the support stopping for it, and I just thought, like, oh my God, there's this this is such a great opportunity for folks in the US to move on to this platform. In my way of thinking, it would be lovely to have more communication across. I mean, I'm from the US originally, and I think just in general, it would be great to have, all the kind of connections that can be made throughout Quakers across the world. And I think that this is one good way of doing that.
Hey, Sean.
Uh-huh.
Wait, hold on a second, Lois. I'm noticing that Pete and Allison haven't shared much lately, so I
Exactly.
want to ask you if either of you wanted to share. I saw Allison nodding as we were talking about continuity as the one web worker leaves.
Yeah, that's come up a lot. Really in all of the websites I've worked on, both when we've had outside people come and help, and then, what happens if they stop responding or if they retire. And, when there's a particular friend in the meeting with expertise, and then, if they leave or get burnt out or pass away. So I think that's one of the reasons why I steered Nashville meeting towards Google Sites, because it was so simple and not dependent on anyone's technical knowledge, not even as much as WordPress, which I think is pretty user-friendly to someone who's pretty comfortable with technology. But I think with Southern California Quarterly and Pacific Yearly, we've had trouble finding friends who are comfortable with editing WordPress to be our website editors. So yeah, continuity has been a big thing for me. And I know Lois also mentioned opting for a static website, and I'm 100% behind that, at least for small monthly meetings, because I think for seekers looking at Quaker websites and deciding whether or not to come, seeing something, if there's news that's 3 years out of date or calendar events that haven't been updated in several years, I think that's almost worse than not having a website at all, because then you start to question whether the meeting still exists. And that was the case for me when I found friends in 2016 or so.
Allison, could you tell us what Google Sites is? I am not familiar with that term.
So Google Sites is a web host, and they offer a pretty easy way to create websites, and it's the platform for creating them is similar to like creating a Google Doc or Google Slides or something, which I think a lot of friends are familiar with. So I can put the URL in the chat. So sites like google.com. And then there's also Google Domains, which we use for Nashville. So we have everything in one place where we get our domain name and our web hosting from Google. They take care of the security certificate and everything. Google Sites itself, it's sites.google.com, I think. Google Sites is free and the domain name is $12 a year. So it's also the cheapest of any of the options I looked at.
I think
I'd be interested, Allison and Pete, to hear from you about, I know friends who have concerns about security and Google use going to advertisers.
Well, some people in our meeting certainly had those concerns. But I think you have those concerns no matter what site you're on to some extent, depending upon what you have, on your website. And if you're using Google Sites, they don't advertise on the site. So that seemed to be a positive kind of thing. And the security is pretty good. I mean, they've worked with security. They have a lot of customers and whatnot, so their security is seemed to be put together pretty well.
There's been a lot of dialogue and discussion within Canadian Yearly Meeting about Google and advertising security, all these issues that you're talking about. We have some people in our meeting who will have nothing to do with Google for various either political or personal reasons. And that's, for instance, our yearly meeting and a number of our monthly meetings use Google Workspace because it's free for charities and not-for-profits. You can have up to 300 accounts at no charge. The other thing is if you have Google Workspace versus the free Google Gmail, you're not mined in the same way that the free ones are. And there's no advertising on those because you're allegedly paying for it, except you're getting it for free because you're a charity. But a number of organizations use that, I think including Amnesty. One organization that doesn't use it is our Canadian Friends Service Committee, partly because they're doing a lot of very sensitive political work. And so they figured for them in particular, they want to make sure they have an extra layer of security, not being scanned or not being, but for general usage, it's just so many meetings and organizations are using Google Workspace. And again, it gives us up to 300 email addresses. It gives us a huge amount of storage space. So we don't have to worry about people accessing a website to get access to meeting minutes or to do committee collaboration. Google Chat is a really fabulous way to do asynchronous committee work. Chat sounds like a chat line where you're discussing, but it's actually project management software. So you set up a different chat discussion for each aspect that the committee is working on. And instead of emailing things back and forth and, oh, I didn't CC, or oh my God, I did CC, or there's BCC or whatever, you end up with a space where you can work on a particular issue of a committee and you see nothing else. There's no distractions, there's no advertising, there's no junk mail. And in there, you can set up a task list. You can have shared files. You can link to Google Docs. You can co-edit documents. So instead of emailing a committee report back and forth for edits and getting 6 different versions, you can all simultaneously work on the same document online in Google Docs, right? And you can actually see each other editing as you go. So it's separating out email and the committee collaboration, the shared file space from the website makes a lot of sense. I haven't actually used Google Sites because we need something a little more sophisticated than that. But I can imagine given how easy the rest of the workspace is, I can imagine that would be a really useful tool. It's not probably for a yearly meeting, but for a small monthly meeting, I think it would be perfect.
We have been using something called G Suites. It is with Google. I know that it got morphed into something else, but I don't know whether it's the sites or it's the workspace or what.
Google Suites got renamed Google Workspace.
Okay, in which case,
it's all
I
the same.
understand that. It's all the same. So what we did is we registered our domain name, davisfriendsmeeting.org, at our G Suite account. And registration was fine. And then there's a place in there when you can say, but don't look here for the stuff, go over there. And we just point it at the other space. So then all of our information on the website is not part of Google. They're just handling the redirection of the domain name. And so that's one way.
Google just recently sold their domain business to Squarespace. They put millions of those over. So now Squarespace is handling all those domains. Google's gotten out of that business.
But I think your domain, our connection is still to G Suite.
Oh yeah, the connection is there, but the domain registration has moved to Squarespace.
Okay, and that's something behind the scenes that we never had to deal with. Yeah. And that's one of the nice things about not having your own server sitting in the world, housing your own domain, which is what I used to do, because then you don't have to worry about all of that registration and security and updating your whatevers. So it worked really well. When we get off this topic, I have another.
I think I just wanted to chime in because I know, and maybe in Europe and the UK, folks are even more reticent to share data and to be a lot of products have a lot of sites have cookies that they set that then go across, that follow you across sites so that they can track behavior, and that makes people uncomfortable. And when you're using Google products, you're automatically doing that. You're helping them gather their information and track you. As far as I know, it's not possible to opt out of that when you're using those products, which can make folks uncomfortable. I know that the folks at the Quaker Meetings Network went out of their way to make sure that unless people are logged in which case you need to set a cookie in order to track the person when they go from page to page. But visitors to the website aren't tracked. They don't in the EU. You have to, if you're setting cookies, you have to give the user an option to say which cookies you set. And when you visit the meeting sites, that doesn't happen because there's no cookies being set. So it's only if the user logs in, and then there's no third-party cookies. So it's just with the Quaker Meetings Network. So you're not sending information off to Meta or Google or any of these big tech companies, which I think for folks there is a big relief.
That's a good time to transition to Lois's next topic.
So one of the things that is useful if you're doing WordPress, whether you're doing it as a full WordPress thing or you're using the WordPress app on some other place, is that you can set it up to have a post page. Posting is where it's like a blog sort of thing. But the nice thing about this is you set up the page and then you make it so that you have a particular email address attached to it. And if someone sends in an email to that address, that document then gets posted, which means that we can have people doing the weekly announcement sheet and not know anything about any of it. All they have to do is either copy that PDF and put it in the email, or copy the information and put it in the email. And when it goes up, it automatically creates a post. It is editable by the site manager, so if somebody makes a mistake, that somebody can fix it. But it's a very simple way to get, if you don't want a static website, you can make a static website with this one little portion that is the announcements, and it can change by email. So it's a good imbalance.
One of the really
Could
cool
you share
things.
how you set that up again?
Say what?
Could you share how you set that up again, or what?
It's in WordPress.
Okay.
You're having your posts, and on the page that, look it up.
Okay.
It's in the back end.
Post by email or blog by email. If you go to WordPress, they've got this little help thing. That's where I found it. I was so excited when I found it. But yeah, I can't tell you exactly how to do it because I'd have to go look it up again. What were you saying, Bruce?
I said one of the really cool things about posts in WordPress is you can assign categories. And so, for instance, here's a social justice category, or here's a events category, or here's etc. And then what you can do is you can create a page that only shows that category. So you can have a link on your menu, click events, and then any post with the event category tag is shows in sequence, but nothing else shows. So you can, because if you're posting regularly and you have 200 posts in there and you're trying to scroll through to find out what's meaningful to you, it can be really a pain. But if you set up those categories and then you just put them in the menu, like link to that category, then people can find instantly what they want. There's all kinds of little features like that in WordPress that are built in that can make access to information a little easier.
And the categories can be set when you're sending that email. There's a way.
Don't know if you can do it from.
Yes.
I haven't ever used the email.
Yes.
They can. Okay, can.
Yes.
Cool.
We tried it.
Yeah.
And so you can specify a category
Yeah.
in the uploading process. So
Cool.
None of our people decided they wanted to take that on, but it was very exciting when we found it.
Great.
Knowing that we have a few minutes before our rather arbitrary cutoff, I'm wondering if we can do two things. One would be, can everybody put your email, if you're comfortable sharing your email address with this group, put your email in the chat, and then people may reach you later for additional networking questions. And then the second one is, I'm noticing that our group has a lot of knowledge, right? We have web technologists, we have people who know software development. I'm wondering if you're open to talking for a few minutes about user friendliness for people who don't have that knowledge, who might use the platforms that you chose. We don't have to go there. We can use our time a different way, but that may be useful to people who aren't on this call.
This question of user friendliness is key, because the best website in the world, if nobody uses it and updates it, is how many features it has. If it isn't used, it will, by definition, is useless. So it's interesting that Sean mentioned the similarity to Squarespace, because if somebody wants something, they want to manage it themselves, and they want to, Squarespace is a really simple drag and drop design, and you can't do everything you can do in WordPress, but it's that's one pathway. But even within WordPress, like I use a professional theme, which has 8 gazillion options on it, which means I can very rapidly make the site look exactly how I want it to. But if I showed that to somebody without training, they would run screaming in the other direction. So there are some websites where the meeting says, "Oh, we want you to set it up, but we want to manage it." I don't use that theme. I use like a really basic WordPress theme. And the WPMU, which is where I do the hosting, has one of the free add-ons is a whole set of WordPress training videos. And I just click and link that into the back end, and anybody who goes on can
that's a really good idea.
Learn how to use it.
That's a good idea.
So WordPress can be as complicated and bizarre as you want, or it can be as simple as you want, depending on the theme and the plugins you use. You know, like on Quaker.ca, for instance, there's an archives database that's built in. There's all, you know, there's all kinds of plugins and things you can use. The thing I like about WPMU, it's kind of a world class, is it's very easy to upgrade. Like, as for instance, as the yearly meeting site required more processing power and, you know, more space, I just have to click, you know, upgrade to the next level, and they just start billing me more. I don't have to move it anywhere. And so there's various different price points, and the other thing is WPMU lets me manage every site that I host from one portal. So I can click on there, and there's 50 sites there, and I can just click update all. You know, so there's ways in which, if you're managing multiple, like if you're doing like a yearly meeting level, and you're managing multiple sites,
A yearly meeting
there's
level,
technology that can help you do that cheaply, because I don't want to be charging do that Quaker meetings, because I don't want to be charging. If I can get the software to do huge amounts of money for tech, if I can get the software to do it for me, it's cheap for them. So anyways, just little bits and pieces in that way. But
Thank you, Bruce.
I think the user friendliness is definitely a hugely important. How to make things simple, and often with simplicity there can be a kind of beauty in that. So things that are overly designed can be distracting and often not as nice as something that's just sometimes. I mean, I don't. You in the US, you guys also have simplicity as a testimony, don't you? It's this kind of fits along. As a designer, I find simplicity to be the hardest thing to do. Actually, it's really easy to throw a lot of stuff out there, and then you have something that is maybe it has all the functionality that you want, but the really difficult task is how to solve 2 or 3 things with one thing to make it more elegant. And one of the things actually that really when I first looked at Quaker app and the Quaker Meetings Network, that really made me excited, made me feel like this was a good piece of work. As somebody who developed software, was that I looked at their support documentation, which is usually thrown together and not of much use. But this was very clear, straightforward, well done. Even like even the privacy statement and the user agreement that you sign, they're all very simple and well designed. And some of that comes with the history of development. There was a person involved whose business it was to make applications for folks who weren't technically savvy, and I think that kind of led them in the right direction, not to over design things. But user experience and design is definitely a really important thing to kind of manage, and that can be difficult.
User friendly and ease of creation are not necessarily the same thing.
You want to say more about that, Allison?
Just that I've experienced that with some WordPress sites. Yeah.
Thank you, friends. Judging by the slight lull in a very active and vibrant conversation, I'm wondering if this might be a good time to wrap up. This concludes drop-in hours with a focus on web hosts. Remember that this program is sponsored by Friends General Conference, and to find out more, you can visit our website, fgcquaker.org, click Programs, and click the Quaker Communications Community of Practice. Take care.